In 2009, specifically December of that year, the entire filmmaking and movie space had been changed forever because the highest grossing film of all time was released. This is James Cameron's Avatar, which has been re-released at least 2 or 3 times now, specifically in this last weekend, which I just got a chance to go check it out once again. And my feelings have kind of changed and diverged into a unique way where I'm really excited to kind of revisit and give a discussion on this movie. And that's why this is called Avatar in 2022. Does this movie hold up? Is it still great? Is it just a theatrical experience, or is it one that you could truly watch at home? This is the discussion that I do want to have here. And if you are new and you like types of videos like this where we talk movies, where we dive a little bit deeper in them, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, because this is a brand new segment that we're starting today with Avatar. And at least once a month, we're going to be doing this and revisiting a movie and doing this sort of unique way. And I'm so happy to be here. So thank you so much again for watching this. And make sure, guys, to share your thoughts down below, because that's one of the most important pieces of talking film, is seeing your guys' thoughts down there as well. For people who have never seen Avatar, do understand there may be some slight spoilers in here if you've never seen the film. Highly recommend you go check it out in the high dynamic frame rate 4K IMAX 3D this week. If you get a chance, it's still in theaters. I'm definitely going to go see it again because it's an experience unlike any other. But Avatar. It's about a paraplegic marine dispatched to the moon of Pandora on a unique mission, and when he goes there, he becomes torn between following his orders and protecting the world he feels is actually his home. It's directed and written by James Cameron, the guy who's given us Terminator, Terminator 2, The Abyss, True Lies, and so many more other classics, even like Aliens. But Avatar is his bread and butter. This is the world that he's technically spent like the last 13, 15, 16 years of his life, almost 20 years at this point. Because we're not just getting the next sequel, we're getting up to 5 Avatar films, which is insane to think. But if it's the same kind of experience that you get in this one, it's hard to argue why you wouldn't want to have an experience like this in any other way. Now, just kind of looking back at this, Avatar was released in December. My dad, he rarely took us to the movies. When we really wanted to see a movie and we begged, he would take us. But Avatar was one of those movies that I feel like the first weekend it came out, the news, the audience, the word of buzz was, you have to see this movie in theaters. Which made my dad go, I should probably take my son to see this movie. And what he ended up doing was taking me to see the movie, but he didn't take me to see it in 3D. He didn't take me to see it in IMAX, which I have no issues with that, but he took me to see it in theaters. And I remember sitting down and watching it for the first time in theaters and absolutely freaking loving it. And having such a blast in this world. Sometimes I felt it was a little bit slow here and there, but to the most part of it all, I sat there in just utter awe. And it really took me back to one of the first times that I had ever seen a movie in theaters. It was an unbelievable experience, I remember, as a kid. And it had stuck with me for a while because I was already super into movies, but this film was something different and dynamic for me. And maybe that was kind of the same for some of you guys, but the way that I compare my thoughts with this was the first time I'd ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Inception, or even, say, Toy Story for the very first time. These movies have changed my life in so many different ways, and there's some of my favorites, and Avatar in the theaters was truly that experience. Then it finally released on, DVD months later, because this film was in theaters forever. And when I got it, I was so excited to watch it, and I rewatched it, and it felt, a little bit slower, not as great as when I first saw it in the theaters, and definitely the first half, the first act itself, getting us into Pandora, getting us all in there, it does feel a little bit lengthy, and sometimes it takes a little bit too long. Now, I know the extended edition, I feel actually does this a little bit better, but the scenes that are added in that version, and comparably, from my understanding, in this version that's in theaters right now, there are scenes changed out that do make the film a little bit better paced. So that's going to be the version that I talk about. But as my experience, it was something that I still really loved this world. And it to me, it was unbelievable that a sequel had been announced, but nothing had been moved forward. And the fact that it's been almost 13, 12 years since we've gotten this original movie, it is baffling to me that it's taken that long to get a sequel. And I feel that's part of the reason that this film doesn't have a pop cultural footprint on so many of us. Think about it. There's no Funko Pops. There's barely any action figures out there about Avatar. There's some coming out now from McFarlane Toys. There's no Hot Toys. There's not really too many statues. There is a giant Disney World Animal Kingdom part of that entire park, which is Pandora, and I've gone there, and it's freaking amazing. But besides that, there's not much of a cultural footprint when it comes to Avatar. It's a part of our culture because of the history that it broke. But then, you know, the filmmaking space, people shit on this film. They call it Fern Gully in space, or they call it Dances with Wolves in space. And it copies so many different things, which has always kind of annoyed me personally, because some of the greatest movies of all time are borrowed and copied from other stories. In fact, if we're just looking at this year in general, Top Gun Maverick literally steals from Star Wars: A New Hope. Like, literally, the trench run is the run that they are doing. So films borrow from movies all the time, and it's okay to be unique in their own way, but come on. I feel like that's a big part of it all, is because when you look at the filmmaking space and you look at critics, and if you're on film Twitter all the time, you see people complain and talk about Avatar and not understanding the reasoning for why this film is so important, and kind of shitting on it in general. But this past weekend, there's been kind of a shift. Like, people have started to come around to this movie, and I have not seen this movie since that time I watched it on DVD. And here we are, watching it again in theaters, and being transformed and taken back. This time in IMAX, this time in 3D, this time with my fiance and her mother. And her mother, like, loves this movie, but she said she even loved it more in 3D. And 3D, I'm not the biggest fan of. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, but I definitely wanted to check it out in this experience, and this was something magnificent. Like, the way that the 3D worked in my eyes, it made me more immersed in Pandora. And again, to hit home, one of the most important parts about this film is the perspective of where this film is at. It's all from Jake Sully's perspective. When he starts to fall in love with Pandora, you are falling in love with Pandora. The shock and awe of this world, the floating mountains, which is like one of the most beautiful segments of it all, when they're flying on the Banshees, and that's like that entire thing taking flight for the first time, those are the things that really hit home. And when he starts to fall in love with, of course, Zoe Saldana's character, who is Neytiri, you also are falling in love at the same time with this character. And it is vastly impressive to see how they were able to mix and cycle all of these elements in there. And again, yes, is it a little bit heavy hitting with its whole thing on keeping the earth, you know, protecting earth and everything of that nature, and nature itself, yes. But it fits, it works, because you care about this world of Pandora. You care about this environment, the people. And I love how, again, it always frames it from Jake Sully's point of view. And I'm very excited to see where the sequel takes it. You know, it's Jake Sully and Neytiri are gonna have kids. So where do we see that go? That's exciting. And again, I have thoughts on the sequel, because I did get to see 5 minutes of the new film with the re-release. That was pretty insane, but I'm gonna leave that for the very end. Continuing this, like, what James Cameron decided to do with this world is quite impressive, and I think the general going audience really loves Avatar. I think they love this world. I think the re-release box office this weekend shows that people love going to Pandora, and that Avatar 2 is gonna absolutely kill it. No matter what film Twitter or your film friends say, oh, that Avatar's dead in the water and that James Cameron should just be doing something else, you have to amaze yourself and think, this guy has had something planned. He made Terminator 2 one of the best sequels of all time. But I feel like it is very underrated when we talk about Zoe Saldana as a performer. She is an amazing actress, and I think her performance as Neytiri is unlike any other performance in this film. And just rewatching it again, you feel and hit all the different emotions. And I understand a lot of that is visual effects and a lot of it is mocap, but just this one scene of seeing behind the scenes mixed with this, like, it is powerful, to say the least.
Never be one of the people!
She makes you feel every bit of emotion that, again, is your gateway, your opening to the world of Pandora, because even though when you land and you're going through the forest for the first time and you haven't met any of the other Na'vi yet, you still are, for the same sense, being like, this is pretty wonderful, this is very unique. But once Sully meets Neytiri, and that love story starts, and then you start to meet the rest of the Na'vi, that's when the world opens up in such an eye-gasmic way. And I say eye-gasmic is because this is a film that heavily relies on us to love this world, to come into this world. And it's truly a theatrical experience. Like, this is, when you argue best theater experiences, I'm not talking about people screaming in the theater because Captain America picked up Mjolnir and threw it at Thanos and started beating the shit out of him. Or when Thor jumps in and comes to Wakanda to save the Avengers' asses. I mean, those are big theatrical experiences that people cheer at. But Avatar is something different. It's a film that does rely on not just fan experiences like that, or fan moments for people to scream at. And there's nothing wrong with those. I love Endgame. I love Infinity War. I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But theatrical experiences like this, where you will never be able to watch it at home like this. You might have the biggest surround sound, the biggest theater, but there's something about 3D with that IMAX screen that really just hits home. It feels, and I mean this as a compliment, it feels like a Disneyland ride. Because you're actually sitting there for 3 hours, the 3D feels seamless, and you're just completely invoked in all of everything going on. And it's unlike, again, any other film out there. This started a 3D craze. People do not get that. And in 2022, while I don't think the film fully works at home, I think the film is still very good, but it is a little bit slower in its pacing. I think certain things just don't take away. You don't get that same experience. It is a little bit lengthy. But in 2022, when you get to see this thing in theaters, it still contains all the same damn feelings. And again, like I said, this film does not have a pop culture footprint, but I think around the sequel finally comes out, that is when it's going to start to pop off. And if the sequel is great, I think we're going to get that. This film, in this year alone, have some better visual effects than most blockbusters today. Like, just the visual effects on the Navi's skin, like, they look so real, the emotion you feel, everything of that nature. The world of Pandora looks like something that you truly are watching a documentary of some new planet that us as Earth have gone to look at and to film and take from. And it is, again, just beautiful to see how every person has a different relationship with the planet of Pandora. And it feels like when we get the Pandora, it is that destination. You are truly and undeniably in love with it. And framing it from one man's perspective, like even just looking at Jake Sully, when he goes into the Avatar body for the first time and he starts to run away from everyone else because he has his legs back. It's those little things that you start to really feel and understand why he feels at home here. Where the planet of Earth was really much just using him to send him off on this mission because they didn't want to waste money. The people of the Na'vi and Pandora itself respect him for who he is. In fact, when Neytiri sees him for the very first time, as just this human, there was never this, oh God, this is who I'm actually with. No, it was his heart. That is the thing, the pure of heart. And even the planet of Pandora knew that. And what is the most beautiful thing about Pandora is its heart. It's its world. It's its creatures. And I think that's one thing that you just get so emotionally wrapped up in. That it's stunning. And I think James Cameron deserves a lot more credit than people give to him. But I've talked all about that. Let's talk about the thing that's really exciting here. Because this is a sci-fi epic. One that's one of the best of all time, and when you go to see the action scenes, the way that Cameron films it and fluidly brings about it, specifically, when the massacre happens at the tree, leading all the way into them battling, leading to them flying the Banshees and taking out the ships and throwing them out and just totally bombarding them. It is awesome to see them hitting the bows, shooting the bow and arrows through the glass, killing these people, and just again, turning that massacre on the other way. And then, of course, when we come down and we have the Colonel, and it's the Colonel versus Sully, and it's just going back and forth at the punches, you feel everything. And the last 40 minutes is just grand, epic at its highest nature. And it's one of the most satisfying things that I have ever seen on the big screen. And it's one of the satisfying things that I could still watch at home and just absolutely feel in awe of how badass it is. This is Avatar in 2022. But like I mentioned, the re-release, I do want to talk about the 5-minute scene they did show because this is the best place to talk about it. And they show a scene, I'm assuming because it's Jake Sully and Neytiri's kid, He's out in the ocean. Looks like something had happened. Someone had hurt this giant whale-like alien creature. But just this very much was not story perspective, but again, it adds in. If we looked at the skies of Pandora, but now we're looking at the oceans of Pandora in this film, and showing us a new creature and showing his interaction with it. This is very much just a technological look for us to look at. The 3D is incredible. The visual effects are literally insane. Like, this looks so real. Like, you come off watching Avatar and you're like, oh my god, this still looks amazing. Then you see that 5-minute scene and just absolutely looks like if you look at The Last of Us, for instance, they just remastered and remade the entire thing, and you look at that, and then you look at like the new version, you're like, okay, this is kind of that same reaction. It is absolutely stunning, and that entire scene is just beautiful in every sort of way. Like the way that the kid is taking out this hook out of the whale's arm, and again goes in towards the entire nature of how we treat our world, but I loved it, and I cannot wait to see more and see how that puts into the frame of context. And I think that just goes as far to show how it all works. And one other thing that James Cameron decided to do is high dynamic frame rate, which he changes the frame rate. I think it gets bumped up to 48. Sometimes it is seamless throughout this, and they did it into the new version, the 2009 version that they just re-released. Sometimes it looks really good, and sometimes it doesn't look too great. I think they need to really decide if they want to go full on frame rate or no frame rate at all. But it's not that big of a deal. I love this movie. I think this is a movie that truly gives you a lot of different experiences, and a lot of different people are going to feel a different way. But I highly recommend, if you've never seen it in IMAX and 3D, absolutely go check it out in theaters. I think that this is the way to see it. It is one of the best theatrical experiences of all time. It is a story that you get emotionally invested in. It's characters that you love. The performances are very underrated, and I think James Cameron crafted something that is a masterpiece of cinema. Like, when you go and see it in the theaters, this is the masterpiece that you go and see in theaters. Is the story borrowed sometimes? Yes, but I think Avatar in 2022 has only grown more, and I think now having this experience of me going back to rewatch it now at home when I get to, I'm going to remember that and feel even more experiences than before. And I loved it. So guys, that is Avatar in 2022. Thank you so much for watching this. You guys are really all the best. I love you guys all. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below your guys' thoughts. More videos like this coming up soon. I really enjoy doing this segment. I've been doing it for video games for the last year and a half, and I've loved doing it for that, so I'm happy to finally bring it over to the movie channel. Thank you so much again for watching, and of course, until next time, stay classy.